Coming up on Over a Barrel, the presidential election is only days away next week. We've got a breakdown on exactly how that is going to impact prices at the pump, crude oil, and whatnot, depending upon who gets elected. All of that and so much more on Over a Barrel, which starts right now. Welcome to the program. I'm Matt McLean. He's Patrick DeHaan. Thanks so much for joining us. If you're listening to us by way of Spotify and the other audio streaming apparatuses, software that you use to listen to this show, you can also view us, the video version on YouTube, the Gas Buddy channel, and make sure that you like and subscribe on no matter which device you happen to be listening to us on. Please don't watch us while you're driving down the road. That would not be good. But you can certainly listen like a radio station.
Right? Unless you're the
passenger is fine, yes. But I mean, I've seen some
Matt
pretty
doesn't want to be
unique things.
liable, guys. Matt doesn't want to be liable.
I've seen some very unique. I have seen people doing their makeup while driving down the road. I'm like, well, that's scary.
I saw a social media video of somebody driving down I-5 playing Candy Crush.
Yeah,
that's just.
I mean, listen to us. This is why we do both. We do the audio, we do the video, right? So, I mean, depending upon where you're at, we are here. So like and subscribe today. And of course, all of your questions and comments as well. We'd love to hear from you as well. Podcast at gasbuddy.com, as well as on X, formerly known as whatever that was, Twitter, Over a Barrel Matt for myself, Gas Buddy Guy, which is obviously Patrick. We are here to handle all that, right? So, all right, let's get right into it, Patrick.
I don't know, Matt. I'm not looking forward to this. I'm sure there'll be some angry emails in your inbox about how somebody didn't agree. But hey, the election's right around the corner.
The election is next week, man. I mean, we what are we supposed to do?
I'm kind of looking forward to getting rid of all the political ads and the political signs. I like to believe that I will make it through a president. I've survived quite a few of them already. So I'm just ready for this thing to be done and over with. But we're going to analyze what the future could look like in terms of what you're paying at the pump under each of the potential presidents.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really stick your heads into the tar sands of Canada and pretend like it doesn't exist. So one way or another, something's going to happen, right?
Well, someone's getting elected. I mean, So there will be a potential. We've been hearing about it both. We could start with drill baby drill, because that's a mantra we've heard from President Trump now for months.
Seriously though, we're not picking sides, but we got to talk about both sides, and we're going to try to do that equally.
We are going to analyze both sides and what they've been saying. And so, we'll start with Trump, who drill baby drill.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit.
He's also kind of promised to cut energy prices in half. He's also mentioned potentially tariffs on a wide range of things that come into the United States. So let's start there. Drill baby drill. I think it's pretty obvious, at least to an analyst, that President Trump would probably be less restrictive on new drilling. He'd probably be less restrictive on environmental issues. And so it'd probably be more friendly to the future of oil drilling. But that doesn't necessarily mean that oil production can go up overnight. Right after permitting, it takes years to build infrastructure, to drill, to explore, find new oil fields potentially. That takes multiple years. So there's not really an instance where drill baby drill is going to turn into drill baby tomorrow. It's going to take a while.
You don't think that the oil drills are at the edge of the parking lot, getting ready to pull out onto the highway and start? You don't think that's probably the case, huh?
Well, I mean, for some of these areas, Matt, for ANWR, for example, I want to get this acronym right. I think it's the Arctic National Wildlife Reserve. Mm-hmm. That might be an area where you can allow for drilling, you can permit drilling, but it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because you're talking about such a remote area of Alaska, right? There's nothing out there. Companies would have to build temporary housing, infrastructure, and it'd have to come a long way. And that's a big risk. So, we'll start there. President Trump, former President Trump, would probably be more friendly to drilling and permitting, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee production. He also has promised to cut energy prices in half, which is virtually impossible because a president in the United States does not control the U.S. oil industry. They control their own fate. if oil prices are high, oil companies are going to be more likely to increase production on their own. Or if oil prices are lower, as Trump is promising, they're going to be less likely to drill more. It's like, Matt, if you suddenly take a pay cut in half, are you going to be more incentivized to work or less? Probably less. You're not going to be as
Okay.
productive.
Okay. So I'm going to try to play the
Devil's
opposing.
advocate, let's go.
Yeah, for both situations here. So let me try to play it for this one. So first of all, the thought process would be, but Patrick, if the price is lower and the permits are a lot easier to get and the restrictions are a lot more relaxed, then they can pump more and make up the difference and make even more money.
Well, if they're able to find something. Just
Right.
because you're permitted and explore doesn't mean there's naturally oil there, Matt. The days of sticking a drill bit into the ground and just having oil gush up are long over. So it's a lot more intense than people think. You can't just stick a drill bit in the ground and get a huge, massive amount of crude oil. So, in permitting costs, let's be honest, a lot of the time the government's paid in royalties. So, that's not restrictive. I mean, there are environmental regulations that Trump can ease, but again, that doesn't guarantee that there's going to be new oil supplies coming out of the ground, right? If it was that easy, Matt, people would just be sticking drill bits in the ground everywhere and having oil spring up. But it's a lot more time intensive and labor intensive, and there's a lot more business risk.
So that we can get the price down to $1.99 a gallon, right? Because Lord knows I've said that how many times over the past couple of years on this podcast. Or we can get it down to 99 cents. So
Well,
if we're going to
we
cut the
can't do
price in
anything.
half,
Whether
but
it's
if we're
you
going
and
to cut
I,
the price in half, right? Right?
whether it's you and I or a president, we can't really do anything. But collectively, if Americans were to suddenly stop driving like they did during the pandemic, and if American demand would go down, then we'd probably have an oversupply situation that would push prices down. Keep in mind, oil is a balance of supply and demand. And if something changes very quickly, if supply were to suddenly balloon overnight, then energy prices could go down. But Matt, I don't think oil production is going to balloon overnight if the price gets cut in half and gets cut. I mean, oil prices are not set by anyone. It's set by what we're willing to pay and an oil company's willingness to drill at that price. If oil prices are high, oil companies are going to be more incentivized to drill. We still need to fill our tanks. So we're willing to pay $2 or $3 or $4. Gasoline demand is inelastic, meaning that people are going to need gasoline regardless if it's $2, $3, $4, $5, or $6, because some people are also, tied to their cars. They need to drive. They need to get places to be able to
Me?
earn a living. Exactly. So that's the tricky part is there's not really a substitute to gasoline demand, or there wasn't until electric cars. But now, so we've talked about Trump. He probably will be more friendly to the oil sector, but that doesn't necessarily mean that energy prices are going to get cut in half. It has nothing to do with energy prices. If energy prices were cut in half tomorrow, Matt, if something happened to cause that to happen, oil companies, like they did during COVID, they scale way back because they don't make as
Well,
much money.
look
So
at the price of crude oil as soon as the economy shut down. Didn't, if memory serves me correctly, didn't it go into negative
well, yes.
below zero?
So
Like
because
they were having to pay.
demand went down, plummeted overnight, which caused oil prices to plummet to negative territory, which caused oil companies to stop producing oil.
Yeah.
So that's what happens when oil prices plummet. And that's why President Trump's, promise to cut energy prices in half is not feasible, because oil companies have less incentive to produce. So you're not going to double production, or you're not going to increase production at half the price. It just doesn't work that way. So that's mostly false. That the president is not, President Trump is elected. He is not going to be able to cut energy prices in half. He may do some
he's
things
elected.
here and there to try and cut energy prices, but in half is unheard of. It can't happen, at least economically. On the flip side, Kamala Harris has talked about, prior to being part of the Biden administration, she had said that she was against fracking. Fracking has been a source of millions of barrels a day of oil production. Having said that, she's now clarified her stance that she is now not against fracking.
Do you think it's because she found out, like somebody said, "Hey, let's get you some information and let's educate you on this and say if you get rid of fracking, here's what's going to happen because all the easy oil is gone"?
I think she learned from the error of her ways. Now I don't know, right? I'm putting words in her mouth. I'm guessing that she figured out that oil production, U.S. oil production, is imperative to the global balance of security. Right? When Russia invaded Ukraine, it was because we had oil left in the SPR. It's because we also produced more oil that we had options. Without US oil production as high, we have less options. That means more risk. And that's probably why they, even Biden, has been buying U.S. oil. He has not, he came in parading, cracking down on oil, but he's kind of backed away from that. And I do think that both the Biden administration and Harris have learned something from that. Now, people will say, well, you don't know if she's actually against fracking. Maybe she's just saying that. Well, politicians on both sides say things. Trump also said that he's going to cut energy prices in half, and that's not going to happen. Maybe Harris is lying too. So we don't really know. We only know what they've said. But I think they've learned a valuable lesson because Americans are tied to gasoline that's affordable. And you're not going to be elected if gas prices are $5 a gallon. So,
or win re-election if gas prices are $5 a gallon.
Well, exactly. So, the timing has also suited Harris, right? Because prices have really come down in where things have been. So prices have come down because oil companies have increased production. Right after the pandemic, oil prices were going up. U.S. oil producers started to increase production, but then Russia invaded Ukraine and oil prices skyrocketed, which is why U.S. oil production came on back quicker then. It was because there was an incentive to return oil production, and that's why the U.S. is back at record oil production. And let's not make a mistake. It's not really anything Biden did. It's oil companies. Oil companies operate regardless of if Biden or Harris or Trump or Bush or Obama or anyone's in the White House. Just like you and I will breathe, we will still have a job or look for a job, regardless of political, affiliation in the White House. You still have a life to live. So oil companies are still going to do what they do. They're going to try to produce oil. They're going to try to produce gasoline from refineries. Politicians may get in the way, and oil companies will still push through and figure out a way how to do it. But
if Kamala Harris gets elected as president, we're all going to be driving electric vehicles in about 6 years anyway, correct?
We'll have to
see. I have to play the other side here.
Well, on the other side of that, Matt, is an interesting dynamic in that Trump has now befriended Elon Musk, or vice versa. I don't know. Is that going to shift the narrative? Will Trump incentivize EVs?
He's openly said that he would.
Well, right. So we don't really know what the future looks like, or if Americans are suddenly not going to have the appetite to drive EVs, because we've already seen that the last couple of years, right? Americans have slowed down their transition of EVs because some people just don't want them. Some people, it doesn't make sense. If you live in downtown Chicago like I do, and you sit in traffic for a couple hours a day, then an electric vehicle makes sense. It doesn't make so much sense in the middle of Colorado or Utah, where there's maybe a lack of infrastructure. There may be a Tesla supercharger, but in cold weather climates, right, the use case is different for electric vehicles than internal combustion engine vehicles. But I think no matter what happens, Matt, if somebody gets elected, the things that will remain consistent: gas prices will be low in the winter, they will go up in the spring, they will slightly moderate for the summer, and then they'll fall in the fall. That is the normal cycle of gas prices.
Barring any major geopolitical event.
Right, or hurricanes. Natural events can get in the way of the seasonal ups and downs of gasoline. But by and large, it doesn't matter who's going to get elected. Almost guarantee that prices are going to start going up in February or March, and they'll peak in April or May. And then they'll start to slowly decline through the summer. If there's a hurricane, they'll jump up and go back down. And then in the fall, prices will start to fall off, just as like they have done this fall.
So basically what we then want to do is we want to look at the idea of me having a tanker fill up the backyard here in the wintertime when prices are low. So during April and May, I can drive around on cheaper gas. Is that what I'm hearing correctly? I just so I hear you.
I mean, if that was a thing, I think there'd be a hazmat concern. And but by the way, I know where you live. If you did that, I would definitely siphon some gasoline out of there. The other problem with that is that gasoline is not stable for that amount of time. That's why, you have products like there are fuel
I
products.
mean, I was just gonna say, off the store shelf, I could buy a couple of those little bottles, fuel stabilizer. It'll be fine.
I
I mean,
mean,
come on,
you
man.
you might need more than a few bottles. You might need a tanker of fuel stabilizer.
It's a minor detail.
But
I'm just throwing it out there.
yeah, but no matter who's elected, Matt, I don't see a paradigm shift in energy prices. I think they may be a little bit more affordable if Trump's elected. However, I'm very concerned about the prospect of tariffs that Trump has promised on a wide range of things, because Canadian oil could get caught up in those tariffs, and that could actually
Ooh.
do the opposite of cut energy prices. It could cause them to soar, because if suddenly you're essentially taxing Canadian oil, that is problematic. That is hugely problematic. So we'll have to see if Trump's elected. We'll have to see if he fulfills that tariff promise. In the same token, if Harris is elected and suddenly just decides to, you know, crack down on fracking, that could be problematic. But there'd be a lot of court fights for that to happen,
I noticed
right?
that you kind of got choked up when you said tariff. It's kind of sticks in the throat, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, it's a tax, right? So it's a tax you and I pay. For example, if,
Right.
if Trump tariffs goods from China, it's just going to make it more expensive for you and I. It's not the Chinese who pay for tariffs. It's the people who are buying things from China that pay tariffs. It's the people that buy the oil from Canada that are paying the tariffs. It's the refineries who are going to pass those tariffs along to you and I. So that's what's so problematic about it. Aside from that, there's probably a lot of misinformation on both sides. But you can't ignore that Democrats have been a little bit less friendly to the oil sector. The other thing that worries me about somebody that lives on the shores of Lake Michigan is President Trump tried to rescind some of the Clean Water Act when he was president. So there are some trade-offs, clean air, clean water. The other thing to look at, Matt, would be gasoline taxes. The federal gas tax hasn't gone up since 1993. Will there be an appetite to raise the gasoline tax? And will we ever get away from the system of summer gasoline that we have?
Yeah, because we have talked about that before. The different types of reformulated
Right.
gas across the country, literally different types of reformulated gas. It just makes a whole lot more sense to have reformulated gas as far as in my opinion, as far as the refineries are concerned. But I mean, that's a part of it. But so we won't be driving around electric vehicles by 2032. Like we're not going to that's just not going to happen. I think I'm hearing you say that, which does make logical sense.
Well, I mean, some of us certainly might, but maybe not all of us.
But I'm saying every American everywhere. In other words, I've been driving around, obviously, across multiple states. I mean, in the past 60 days, I've been in like 15 states, all behind the wheel of a vehicle, not in an airplane, right? So there are gas stations, convenience stores that are being built left, right, and
Yeah.
sideways everywhere. So my thought process would be, if we were really in that major of a jeopardy, then why would all these companies be going into the idea of building brand new convenience stores? And I mean everywhere. There's a whole 5 minutes from here, there are two of them under construction where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah.
I mean, why? What? I mean, come on. Business people are not dumb, right? I own a business. Business people are not dumb. They know the forecast and they see kind of what's going around, and they're not going to sit there and build a whole bunch of brand new entities that 5 years from now they're going to shut down. I mean, that's just reality. That's just a logic, right?
Well, and because they have real estate, it doesn't matter what they sell, whether it's gasoline on those properties. They can sell gasoline, they can sell diesel, they can sell electricity. So EVs, they need places to fill up on the road as well. So, but the real estate is going to be valuable as well, because you can pivot and do whatever you want on that land. Land is land, and you're going to need it to do just about anything. One thing
Yeah.
you mentioned too, circle back on, 2025 is going to bring some really interesting new regulations when it comes to the types of gasoline required. Here's a map of what's going to look like next summer of 2025. This is from the American Petroleum
What?
Institute. And for those that don't know, the governors of these states in purple in the Midwest basically wanted to shift, because a lot of these are areas where ethanol is blended into gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these areas that are shaded in purple, you're probably going to start seeing more E15 show up, and it may actually replace E10. But it will also cause some of these areas to have a new foundational of gasoline. That is, it's going to be a slightly lower RVP because previously, Matt, in summers and years past, if you blended with ethanol, you got a 1 pound RVP waiver. Essentially, your gasoline could have higher RVP and thus be cheaper. But now the base stock for gasoline in these purple states is going to be a little bit more expensive. So the Midwest, it's going to be really interesting to see. And by the way, as a president, you don't have control over California because California is supersedes the EPA. But all of this, if you could make this more simple, that might be really interesting and helpful. Because look at Salt Lake City, Denver, Phoenix, Dallas, Houston. Actually, I think this is Houston.
Yeah, it's Houston.
Eastern Texas, St. Louis, Chicago, Detroit, the East Coast. All these areas use something a little bit different.
I see Louisville there.
Yeah, look at those two little counties in Kentucky doing their own thing.
Yeah, and portions of Indiana there as well. I'm really surprised. I'm surprised Cincinnati isn't because it's not far from Louisville.
Yeah, Matt,
very interesting.
Look at these maps here. If you're in Chicago and you cross that border, there's 3 different types of gasoline in this little area. You have blue, you have purple, and then you have white. But all in all, Matt, to kind of close this up, it's going to be really interesting to see who's elected and how things shift. I don't think there's going to be monumental shifts. There's clearly differences between politicians. There's no denying it. But again, I don't think that there's going to be a massive drop in gas prices if Trump's elected, and I don't think there's going to be a massive surge in prices if Harris is elected. So we'll leave it there. We'll see where we are in 4 years from now. We'll have to dig this one back up and see how things ended up. But for now, I don't think that there's a massive difference on where the candidates stand. So get out there and vote. That's your right as an American. I hope everyone will go do that.
That's going to wrap up Over a Barrel. Stay tuned, and we'll, of course, see you again coming up next week.